Media is reporting the first death in Tonga from a tsunami triggered by a volcanic eruption. The victim was a British woman whose relatives told British media that she was swept away by the waves. With communications still crippled, the true death toll and extent of damage due to the disaster are still unknown. An underwater volcanic eruption on Saturday triggered a tsunami across Pacific coastlines from Japan to the United States. Phone lines are still down and an undersea internet cable between Tonga and Fiji was cut. Only fragments of information have filtered out via a handful of satellite phones on the island. Well, for more, let's go to our correspondent Owen Poland, who joins us from Auckland, New Zealand. Owen, so 3 days since this eruption and tsunami, and we're still getting the details. What's the latest?
Well, Zhao, in the last hour or so, the Tongan government has declared an official state of emergency after last weekend's eruption and tsunami, and there are now unconfirmed reports that 3 people have died in Tonga as a result of that. The only victim identified so far, as you mentioned, is a 50-year-old British woman, Angela Glover, who co-founded Tonga's Animal Welfare Society. And she was tragically swept away by the tsunami while she was trying to save some dogs. Her brother in England has described her as the emotional heart of their family, and they're absolutely shattered by her loss. Meanwhile, aerial surveys conducted by the New Zealand and Australian Air Forces have discovered significant damage on the west coast of Tonga's main island of Tonga Tapu, where the popular Ha'atafu beach resort has been completely destroyed and many dozens of homes have simply been washed away. The International Red Cross is standing by to launch a disaster emergency fund, but the biggest challenge is the lack of telephone and internet communications in Tonga, as you say, caused by that broken undersea communications cable, which could take 2 weeks to fix. A thick layer of ash on the runway in Tonga's capital of Nuku'alofa is also preventing aircraft from landing with humanitarian aid, including much needed water supplies. So the New Zealand Navy has now sent 2 ships to the islands with emergency supplies. Here in New Zealand, an appeal has just been launched today to donate food that will help people whose crops have also been destroyed by ash.
And Owen, is there a possible second eruption that could happen there in the near future? What are we hearing from experts?
Well, scientists here in New Zealand that study these things have been warning that there is a possibility of further eruptions in the weeks and possibly even years ahead. But so far there have been 2 smaller eruptions since Saturday's big blast, which has been described as the biggest in the world in the past 30 years. The United Nations has also detected a distress signal from an isolated low-lying group of islands in Tonga, which has prompted fresh concern for the 8,000 or so people who live in the outlying islands near the volcanic zone. New satellite images show that the volcanic island has now been almost completely wiped from the face of the earth, although there have been no reports of more tsunami like the ones that caused so much destruction a few days ago. The main focus right now, of course, is getting aid to the islands as quickly as possible. And unfortunately for one group of migrant workers from Tonga here in New Zealand, the closure of the main airport there means that their flights home this week have now been cancelled, Joe.
And Owen, so of course we're not getting much details from Tonga itself because of all the communications been cut off, but what do we know about from neighbouring islands and neighbouring countries? What have they said about the impact of this volcanic eruption and tsunami?
Well, obviously the main impact for other countries such as Fiji and Australia and New Zealand and South America, they were all impacted to a various extent by the tsunami that followed the Saturday's eruption. And there has been damage, particularly in Fiji and here in New Zealand. One major marina in the north of the country had a big hit and caused millions of dollars worth of damage to the marina and to dozens of boats which were either sank or were simply damaged by banging into each other. And of course in South America, in Peru, 2 people have died after drowning in the waves that were whipped up by the tsunami. So it has caused a fairly widespread impact around the Asia-Pacific region.
Thank you so much for updating us. That's Owen Poland in Auckland for us. The neighbouring island Fiji also felt the impact, and we're joined now by a Chinese national who lives in the capital Suva there, and that's Liu Fang. Thank you so much for being with us. So if you could tell us first about your experience, what did you feel from the eruption?
Actually, when the volcano erupted, I was playing tennis with my friends. We played from about 4 p.m. Between 4 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. Actually, to be honest, I didn't feel anything.
Well, how is?
Yeah, but when I came home, I received the message from my friend in Suva. She checked with me that if we feel anything, because she felt the shake about 10 minutes. She thought it would be an earthquake.
And what's been the impact on Fiji? What's the situation like there now? Are there a lot of precautions being taken for another possible eruption?
Actually, according to the forecast, maybe there will be some other more. Actually, I think it is yesterday there is one more eruption already. But here, actually in Fiji, I mean, there is no more impact. From yesterday until today, it's still raining. But you know the weather in Suva, it's always raining, and also it is a season now. So actually, we just feel everything is just as normal as usual.
I didn't know that, but that's good to know. Well, thank you so much for speaking to us. That's Liu Fang in Suva, Fiji for us. That's neighbouring island to Tonga.